Kaneki, the protagonist of Tokyo Ghoul, is a character marked by profound emotional and psychological transformations, facing not only the horrors of a cruel world, but also the internal struggle with his own motivations and ideals. Her journey is a powerful illustration of how love, when misunderstood or misdirected, can become a crushing weight. This theme resonates with many passages in the Bible, which talk about love and its complexities, especially when one loses balance and divine perspective. Love, in the biblical view, is something that was instituted by God, a force that transcends human understanding and that is destined to bring us closer to each other and to God. However, the Bible also warns about the dangers of a misguided love, a love that does not reflect the character of Christ but rather human failings. Kaneki's love is, in many moments, a distorted reflection of this divine love, marked by suffering, excessive sacrifices, and a desire for acceptance and redemption that drag him into a cycle of pain and hopelessness. When Kaneki finds himself torn between his human side and his new identity as a ghoul, he becomes a reflection of a heart that, lost in its own emotions, finds no rest. The love he feels for his friends, especially for Rise, and the incessant search for understanding and acceptance lead him to choices that dehumanize him. He transforms physically and spiritually, each wrong decision weighing on him like a shadow that won't leave him alone. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not mistreat, it does not seek its own interests, it is not easily angered, it does not hold a grudge. 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4-5. These words of Paul remind us that God's love is uplifting and restorative. But Kaneki, in his search for a love that understands him, often strays from what is pure and true. His love is consumed by anger, revenge, and guilt, factors that sink him deeper and deeper into the darkness of his own soul. On his journey, he is challenged to rediscover what true love is, a love that does not cling to suffering or its own limitations. As Kaneki delves deeper into the darkness of his existence as a ghoul, he begins to experience the weight of the love he has for himself. He feels like he needs to be stronger, more capable of protecting those he loves. But this relentless pursuit of perfection and strength makes him lose sight of who he really is. The love he has for himself is not based on truth, but on a distorted idea of who he should be. In many moments, he finds himself in an existential dilemma: be the monster that everyone expects him to be, or the vulnerable and imperfect human being that he really is. This internal conflict is similar to the struggle many face when self-love becomes a burden, when expectations about who we should be prevent us from accepting our own humanity. The Bible also warns us about this kind of selfish and excessive love. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Matthew 22 verse 39. This commandment does not say that we must love ourselves above all else, but that we must love ourselves with the same measure of love with which we love others. This implies a balance that Kaneki struggles to find. He loses track of this balance throughout his journey, and the love he has for himself becomes an obsession, a weight that prevents him from moving forward. As Kaneki grows further away from his friends and humanity, he begins to harbor a deep bitterness. The love he had for his loved ones, for the world, and even for himself turns into pain and resentment. This is reflected in the way he sees the world around him, where violence and injustice seem to be the only constant. He finds himself trapped in a cycle of suffering, where love turns into a destructive force that only perpetuates more pain. The Bible also warns us against allowing love to become a burden we carry in the form of bitterness and resentment. Take heed, brethren, lest any of you have an evil and unbelieving heart, which turns away from the living God. But encourage one another every day, as long as it is called today, lest any of you be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Hebrews 3 verses 12-13. Bitterness is born when love is corrupted by sin and injustice. And that is exactly what happens to Kaneki. He allows himself to be consumed by pain and injustice, and in the process, he loses the ability to love in a pure and true way. However, Kaneki's story does not end in suffering and hopelessness. In his search for redemption and acceptance, He ultimately learns that true love is not a burden, but a force that frees and heals. He begins to understand that true transformation does not come from endlessly fighting suffering, but from accepting his vulnerability and surrendering himself to something greater. This is the path of redemption, which, although painful, leads to true freedom. In the Bible, we see that God offers us a love that does not weigh us down, but sets us free. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Matthew 11 verses 28 to 29. God's love is the one that heals, that frees us from the burden of sin and guilt. When love becomes a burden, it is a sign that we need to reevaluate our perspective and our understanding of that love. Just like Kaneki, we need to understand that true freedom comes when we are able to surrender our pains, fears, and uncertainties to God. Kaneki's story, like many aspects of human life, illustrates the complexity of love and its different forms of manifestation. Love, when not balanced and based on divine principles, can become a burden, something that destroys us instead of building us up. Kaneki's journey, with all his internal struggles and transformations, teaches us that true love is one that gives itself without conditions, that seeks reconciliation and healing. And in the end, as it is written in 1 Corinthians 13, now therefore remain faith, hope, and love, these three. But the greatest of these is love. It is this love, the love that is patient, kind, that does not take pride or hold grudges, that, when accepted and lived truly, can transform our lives, freeing us from the weight that misunderstood love can cause.